Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us during your day for this event. Welcome to Walsh College's Conversations with Leaders, addressing the cyber risks of Industry 4.0. This is the second in a series of 3 conversations on cybersecurity and how industry leaders should address this pervasive multidisciplinary risk. I'm Susie Siegel, and I want to thank our Walsh College Foundation and its volunteers for making events like this possible for our community. Specifically, I want to thank our alumni engagement team, especially Brian Pilarski, Tom McGinnis, and Vicki Kamenova. I also wish to thank our advancement team for their time and work spent preparing this event. Thank you, Jacqueline, Michelle, Sue, Rebecca, Sarah, and Callie. At Walsh College, we see learning as a transformational, lifelong experience, and we're grateful for all who support our mission and our students to do so. So today, I am pleased and honored to introduce our panel of speakers. Mr. Martin Bally. Mr. Martin Bally is the Chief Information and Security Officer for Campbells Soup. He previously served as CISO for Stellantis and has over 20 years of experience in cybersecurity. And in 2020, Martin was recognized as a top 100 CISO by Cyber Defense magazine. Thank you, Martin, for joining today. Mark Murphy. Mr. Mark Murphy is Executive Vice President and Chief Information and Digital Officer for 3M. Mark previously served as CIO for Abbott Laboratories and has over 2 decades of experience in developing and leading global technology organizations across diverse industries. Mark, thank you for joining us today. Mr. Jamey Sample. Jamey is the Chief Security and Privacy Officer for Xcel Energy. Jamey previously served as the America's Energy Security and Operational Technology Leader at Ernst & Young and has over 25 years of industry experience. Thank you for joining us, Jamey. And our moderator for today's event at Walsh is Walsh College alumna and Foundation Director, Vicki Kamenova. Vicki is a partner and principal in Ernst & Young's cybersecurity practice. She is a double Walsh alum, earning her Bachelor of Business Administration in Computer Information Systems in 2004 and a Master of Science in Information Assurance in 2010. Vicki is a strong advocate for encouraging women to explore and pursue STEM careers, and we are grateful and honored to have these guests with us and Vicki here to share their insights and experience. Now, before we get started, there's just a few housekeeping items. First, I want to make you aware that we are recording this session and the mute button is on for all participants. So if you wish to ask a question during the discussion, we welcome you to use the chat function to send your messages, and we will monitor the chat for questions and comments, and there'll be time toward the end of the discussion, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So without further ado, let us begin. I will turn it over to you, Vicki.
Thank you, Susie. I appreciate the welcome that you share with us today and the nice introductions here. And thanks to everyone who joined us today, and especially our panelists. So gentlemen, let's just dive in. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, but I know that this topic is very relevant, probably somewhat also new to many of those on the phone today. So what I'd like to do is take a few moments to level set. We hear terms such as smart manufacturing, industry 4.0, connected manufacturing, digital manufacturing, so many ways to talk about the changes that are occurring. I wanted to understand, when we step back and look at what's at the heart of all of this, is a term also referred to as operational technology, or OT. So I'd like to ask each one of you to comment, what does OT mean to you and your respective companies? What kind of technology are we really talking about? So Martin, considering you're here next to me, can we start with you?
She's picking on me because I'm the closest.
That's right.
No, thank you, Vicki, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Walsh, for having me. So OT, I would say for me, as it is defined, I don't want to say loosely, but say from a 1,000-foot view, is to me, OT is using technology to produce a product that's generating revenue. Right? It's tied to the business, its core asset, and it's tied to the revenue generating of the organization. And that could be any technology. In manufacturing, it could be a PLC or robot. Anything that's contributing to the production of that product. And that's the way I see it. Right? So it's not like your email. Email goes down, we're still producing, right? But it's something else that's actually tied to it.
So for Campbell's, we're talking ovens, we're talking mixers,
A lot
robots,
of
right?
things, yeah.
Things like
I
that.
just joined the organization, I'm learning, so coming from automotive, I would tell you, it's, I don't want to say night and day, but it's definitely different. And I would say, exactly, it's ovens, it's gonna be temperature gauges, you know, different things that, you know, the way we mix ingredients, right? That process, right? Or downloading the recipes for ingredients and dispersing those ingredients, right? Into making a product. So that's all key, because when you think about all the different things that go on from a food manufacturer, right? There's contamination, right? That's a risk, or even allergies, right? Making sure you don't put too much of one ingredient or mixing ingredients, peanut allergies, all that other stuff. So, you know, that's really core. There's a lot of things that go in from an OT perspective, especially in food manufacturing.
So Mark, over to you. 3M makes an enormous amount of products, touches many different industries. So what does OT help 3M do, and how, you know, what kind of technologies are we really dealing with for this type of distributed manufacturing?
Sure, Vicki, and like Martin, happy to be here. I appreciate the time today. So 3M, we're a global company. We do business in over 70 different countries around the world. We have 200 plus manufacturing facilities that are typically working around the clock, producing products. We have a tremendous amount of technology in each and every one of these plants, and it ranges from things that people are more common with, like an enterprise resource planning system, all the way down into programmable logic controllers that actually run different aspects of the line. We've got, you know, temperature sensors, we've got air quality sensors. We capture more data in these plants than people would appreciate, hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of data on a daily basis, really quality data, right? And so we make products that are in front of everybody's LED screens, things like that, and they're actually etchings and things that we have, and layers of resin that we put down on these products that are invisible to the human eye, but from a quality perspective, if they aren't applied correctly, it doesn't work. And so we actually have imaging systems that are capturing all this information in real time to tell us if we have a quality product, so that we can stop the line or stop that run and redirect it if we need to sooner rather than later. So, you know, we have robotic systems. We have a little bit of everything, and that's only increasing. When you think about it, you know, it used to be that the plants were a little bit more manual in nature, but everybody's driving automation, robotic automation, process automation, things like that, so that we can handle more scale, we can lower our costs, and it's all driven by technology.
Thank you. And Jamey, you know, you're in a utility, so part of critical infrastructure. Can you talk about you know, what type of devices you guys use, and the importance of those types of machines working properly when you consider, you know, the output that you guys are responsible for?
Absolutely, and similar to my previous commenters, thank you for the opportunity of being here today. It's awesome to be able to share the knowledge and what we've learned for the next people coming into the industry to think about and help make us better. So in this area, Xcel Energy, you know, we're a power generation and delivery company. We've got nuclear plants, wind farms, solar farms, fossil plants, all the way to transmission generation, and we've got about 5 million customers in 8 states. So we operate over 8 states. So generating electricity all the way to delivering it to your light switch or to your gas stove is everything that's considered OT for us. So, you know, at the plants, we're looking at all the instrumentation to make sure all the plants are running safely and operating, you know, in a safe manner. You have to think about all the mechanical components that go on in a plant, from you know, the generator spinning at high rates of speed, all the way to the electricity being created out of those. So all the safety systems are related to safe plant operations and all that are associated with our OT. When we get to power delivery, which is transmission generation of both gas and electricity, this is monitoring the gas pressurization on pipelines. It is monitoring for wildfire, for heat on electric lines and stuff like that under certain conditions to help prevent wildfire. We've got, we build in wildfire settings on our transmission and distribution lines and all of that to help mitigate against wildfire. All that's happening in the OT world, all the way to your meter, to your house, and what we're doing at the meter for power delivery on both gas and electric. So that world around like we talked about a little bit, but some of the other panelists talked about around quality of service, quality of what's going on in the plant, even like fuel mixture quality and all of that, all the way to safety systems to keep people from being in danger. That makes up our OT kind of universe.
Thank you. So everything you guys are saying is pointing to the fact that data is getting to be relied upon more and more as we continue to modernize facilities, as we continue to instrument them to be able to collect this information. And obviously the consequences are pretty significant, from quality to food poisoning to preventing wildfires. How is the shift to digital impacting OT more specifically, and how does that impact the job of a security professional? We are dealing with a great degree of complexity here. So digital is occurring in the business in many areas, be it transforming the customer experience, be it building new solutions for how employees work, modernizing the supply chain. What about OT in these legacy environments with so much technology that is has been around for a long time? What are your thoughts? Mark, you want to start?
Sure, happy to. So I start with kind of the opportunity and what's possible. If you think, I alluded to it earlier, but the technology we have in our plants is only going to increase. It's not going to decrease. The reliance on technology is higher than it's ever been. It becomes very interesting because when you think about architecture, we talk about the data that we're collecting. We're talking about that increasingly being used in real time for decision making. That means we actually have to localize a lot of those services. We can't go pull those back to the cloud. We can't go put those out on the edge because of the real time need for that information, which means we continue to put more and more technology locally in these 200 different plants. And so how you have to think about that and how you have to manage that and secure that to protect it. But it's, whether we use it for robotics, whether we use it for quality, whether we use it for air emissions, water emissions. It's in every single part of our business, even to the point now, as we look at our business continuity plans, it's virtually impossible to go run your plant without technology. And so we're seeing a lot of the benefits of that too, and the possibilities, the data and the quality, the ability to stop a line sooner and redirect it if the quality isn't there. We have tooling that, it's really exciting, but we have tooling that we make that goes and actually imprints on these films up to like 8-10 nanometers. And so if you think about that, what is it, 100,000 nanometers? That's how thick a sheet of paper is. We're etching into these tooling things 8 to 10 nanometer depths. You can't see that with the human eye. And so you need digital technologies to read that and tell you if the quality is there and the accuracy is there. And so all that stuff, we scaled our respirator, our N95 mass production during COVID using digital twins to kind of model, bottlenecks in our process. So everything is technology oriented. You're putting more in there. What is tough about a plant is it's a mix of a lot of new cutting edge technology and a lot of decade old technology, and which makes the OT cybersecurity dimension of this very, very interesting.
Jamey, what are your thoughts? How is digital
Yeah,
impacting OT?
Yeah, so in our world, a lot of similarities to what Mark had talked about. We're seeing you think about we're a 150-year-old industry, right? We have legacy, we have system, when we build power plants or substations or run lines and pipes, I mean, you're talking, 30, 50-year investments that's expected to be there. So you're talking a lot of legacy technology. And so with digitization and taking really out of, we had something called, kind of person in the middle, being an operator, making operating decisions of when to turn on certain assets and turn off certain assets to make safe. All that's becoming now so fast that we have to rely on machine learning and digitization around that. You could have a control room operator that would say, this generation facilities, going out, let's de-energize these lines, re-energize these lines. But that happens so fast today that human element is not in line anymore. And so the integrity of the data in decision making in OT is becoming more and more critical every day for us. We're starting to look, as Mark talked about, I think manufacturing's a little bit ahead on this in some areas around digital twinning. We're doing some of that in nuclear already at our nuclear plants, but we're looking at how do we start creating digital twins in some of our other environments to be able to look for operational efficiencies, to do modeling, to do testing, to look at how we can gain efficiencies. And I think one of the things we haven't really talked about is the reliability and uptime expected out of the OT systems. We can't just go in and patch them like we do an OT system. We can't just take them down because that impacts the production line. So and that's where the digital twinning technology comes in really helpful for us, because if we can model and digital twin out the environment, we can allow it to run in parallel while we do all the testing, verification, and optimization in the digital twin, and then look at how we reapply that over to OT. So using some of that advanced technology in the OT space is key to us. We're seeing a lot of convergence between your traditional IT and OT environments. What we've seen is our vendors and manufacturers used to, in the OT environment, it was all proprietary operating systems and things like that. And so it was very much a closed environment. Today, it's becoming more and more open. And what I mean by that is they're using, for time to market around applications, they're embedding Java and other web services into OT, which that would have never happened 10, 15 years ago because I need to see it remotely. They're integrating it with billing systems and other scheduling systems that then opens it up to the corporate network. So we're seeing a lot, as we move into this integrated world and this more automated world, we're seeing, that true kind of world without borders or boundaries. We're kind of really seeing that OT is becoming more and more exposed today than it ever has been before. And I don't see that stopping. And so that's some of the, that digital transformation is causing a lot of that change around that openness that we're having to do. Used to, with being analog, we were a huge analog. We could set it and forget it and run it for 20 years. Now with digital, we have to touch it, every month or every couple of months for patching, things like that. So the digital transformation has been very disruptive in the OT space for us.
Are you experiencing similar?
Yeah, I agree. And I just to echo a little bit about both Mark and Jamey, I think, Jamey hit on it with the integrity piece. When you look at security, confidentiality, availability, integrity is key in the OT, because if it's garbage in, it's going to be garbage out. We're relying heavily on good data to make decisions on, right? If we're going to shut down this line, or we're going to do preventative maintenance, all these things. So we see digital transformation is just that, is doing things differently. So in a manufacturing place, you could see using that data to be able to forecast potential outage. So, okay, we need to do preventive maintenance now, or we're going to suffer a longer outage, right? So what do we do with the manpower? Do we call them in? Do we say, hey, delay them for a couple hours or whatever? So, all this good information so we can make well-informed decisions on how to better run our business. I would say what's happening is, as we echoed, is we have a lot of legacy technology that's going to sit there for a while. It's not going anywhere, right? Those investments are hefty. Over the next, decade, we're going to see a large investment back into the OT space. And you're talking about 5G. I'll tell you how we're looking at it a little bit from Campbell's perspective. A lot of it is we weren't able to produce enough product for the demands that are out there, right? Because of, shortage of material, shortage of labor. So we're talking about, okay, how do we get, more mobile warehousing? So 5G is going to enable that for us, right? With, before, if we're going to open a warehouse, it's about getting real estate, getting a location, ordering circuits, installing wire, all this stuff. Now with wireless and 5G, we can do it in probably a month, right? And be mobile, pop it up, use it as we need it, sundown it when we don't need it anymore, right? So that same advantage, if we take it to the plant floor, we know that plants have their own P&L, profit loss, right? So they have a corporate governance, but they have their own P&L. So ideally, any vendor can sell a plant something too. So we know that risk can exist. And if they buy a piece of equipment and somebody says, hey, you don't even need IT to help set this up, you have 5G connectivity, we'll install it and we'll help remotely support you, right? That's going to bypass all our firewalls, all our security defenses and everything. So, that disruption is coming in. It's about making sure we have good partnerships with the plants, understanding, hey, we're not here to slow them down, we're here to make them go faster. Look in our portfolio first before you look at buying something. And if it's something we don't have, let's partner and put this in and do it quickly for you, right? And that's how we have to be. Like I always use the analogy coming from automotive, security was the brakes on a car. And brakes were put on a car not to slow it down, but make it go faster, allow it to go faster. That's where we have to be from a security perspective.
That's great. So more data, more automation, more activity on the plan, and more reliance on this information to drive very important business decisions. When you think about the importance of security, I mean, we cannot overestimate just how important security becomes in this discussion. Do you think that your enterprise IT security programs lend themselves well to protecting the OT environment? So let's start with you, Ken.
Yeah, I tell you, so, coming from a couple different organizations, when I was at Diebold, I had enterprise security and I inherited product security. So you think of a Diebold, right? It's an ATM. That's probably the caveman of IoT, right? When you think of it, this thing was sat out in the wild, had $250,000 cash, and every Tom, Dick, or Harry was trying to break into it and make it spit out cash, right? So I inherited that piece, and I tell you, it was intriguing because it was new for us, right? So we said, how do we partner well with engineering? Because engineering and IT don't usually mix well, right? So it was really creating a good governance partnership with those guys and creating agreed upon rules of how we would move forward and then, what the requirements would be. And I took that same thing and I did it over at Stellantis. So we talk about vehicles, right? Coming from the, Stellantis, we were, the G-Pack is notarized, right? That was the first hack, remotely hacking a car, causing it to crash. So that cost us $100 million in recall, right? And all the efforts we did to remediate, plug that hole through the port, through the Sprint network and all that stuff. We had to create good governance and good partnership with R&D too, right? Because ideally we don't have expertise in producing a car, engineering a vehicle and that stuff, but we do have expertise in the technology piece. So we come in and kind of actually complement and partner with them and ideally have good governance over that, and I think we're doing the same thing in Campbells, right? We're creating the same kind of governance. And I tell you, the thing is, it can't shift totally to IT and engineering is not going to give it up, right? But they don't want to inherit, they don't want to accept all the cyber risk either. So we have to partner. And I think that's the best way of doing it. So back to your question, should it fall with, are we equipped to? I think we're hiring expertise and we're partnering with engineering because ideally we need to grow better engineers who understand security, not IT people that know how to produce a vehicle or, produce manufacturing and, in utilities or in manufacturing 3M, right? We don't want to take over their job. They just have to learn a little bit more about security. Right?
Mark, what are your thoughts? You know, I'm sure there is a great degree of convergence going on at 3M as well. So what are some of the challenges you're seeing in kind of building that integrated security team that understands both sides?
Yeah, I think, I think Jamey and Martin alluded.
And I was going to say, and because 3M takes things and make it better, we're expecting a really good answer, Mark.
Well,
How do you make better?
No
what I'm
pressure,
doing?
Mark.
yeah. No, I mean, it's an interesting journey, right? Because on the enterprise IT side, we think about security a little bit differently. We think about patching a little bit differently. We think about outage windows a little bit differently. And so, you have to kind of evolve how you think about this from the enterprise side into the OT side. You also have to understand on the OT side, it's a little bit like a hospital where there's a ton of technology that's brought in that doesn't come in through your IT organization. Or, it's with Siemens or, these different equipment manufacturers. Maybe it's been there 10 or 15 years. All that stuff is connected. It's running an operating system. And so there's that kind of dimensionality to this too, of how do you harden and secure and things like that. And so a lot of it, Martin alluded to this, there won't be enough security people in the world to do this. There's a huge part of education, awareness, collaboration with your enterprise operations group, your manufacturing teams on roles and responsibilities, how you factor security into your decision-making as you go out and procure equipment. You think about life cycling of that and pushing expectations out to the vendors, much like we get expectations pushed on us from Microsoft that when you're on Microsoft, you've got to patch within this kind of time frame. And, we have to kind of push that back out to these different third parties. So I think there's that. I think there's also the yin and the yang, because increasingly with the reliance on technology, there's a lot of connectivity between the sites and the rest of the enterprise. And so being a lot more transparent about what we need to move back and forth and why and how we manage that, and kind of rules of engagement for the different groups to operate is extremely important as well. But it's certainly for us, it's a little bit of a different world. And you're talking an embedded system, you're talking something where I can't maybe get an outage window for an entire year, but I need to patch. And some of that you have to work back into architectures, and that takes time. These are a lot of cases, these are not short cycle things, they're things you need to build into all of your incremental investments and decisions so that over time you're getting better and better and anticipating where you need to be. Is that okay, Jamey, or is that you want me to kind of
No,
that's perfect.
This was great. So the question I have is, you're talking about a lot of education of educating the engineering community, educating the IT community around the OT issues. Are these tough conversations? And also, I'll ask the question a little further. How about educating senior leaders and the board on these challenges? What are you doing as leaders to make sure they understand the world you live in and the challenges you're facing? So Jamey, let's start with you.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions there, so I'll kind of unpack one at a time.
I'm expecting a great answer. I'm a customer of yours. I'm a customer of yours, Jamey, so I'm expecting a great answer there.
Absolutely. So, it's definitely a team sport. I think, one of the things, if you look at, like Mark was saying, you've got embedded systems. We talked a little bit earlier about these used to be very much set them and forget them type systems. And so it is a different mindset, and it's a team sport. We talk about zero trust. Is OT systems were inherently designed and built to be trusted, because they're in parallel with each other. They're talking to each other to run mechanics, right? Because OT is really running the mechanical part of operations, and so they're inherently built to be trusted. So when you go out and you talk to a relay tech or a field engineer about, well, how does the system trust itself? And he's like, well, it was designed that way, right? There's zero thinking about the negative or an adversary, a bad, looking through a bad lens. And so with us, what we've done, we partner, like my organization, we're an enterprise organization that reports up into the CEO organization. And so we look across, and I kind of call us the brick or the mortar in the brick wall. We bring a lot of these teams together to have discussions around risk-based scenarios. So we'll work with business operations to say, what's your operational risk? What are you concerned about? And you'll hear things of loss of visibility for command and control, loss of telemetry data to be able to monitor the health of the system, things like that. And then we'll bring in IT, OT, and other the telecom groups and run through those scenarios with them to say, what's in our environment that would cause that? How's it designed? What vulnerabilities and threats do you think that are out there? So we spend a lot of time being teachers and educating the different components of the workforce on how to look at this through a different lens. And as it relates back to the risk that they feel is applicable to those assets. And so, like I said, it's kind of like a classroom environment a lot of times. We're identifying risk scenarios and working through those, doing tabletops and all of that to drive that understanding. So that's what we're doing on that IT-OT convergence of getting the different groups thinking very similar. There's no silver bullet. And there's no one group that knows everything. You can't just go to security and say, oh, how do you secure this? Security doesn't know how to secure it. We have ideas, we have thoughts. The business units have ideas and thoughts. IT has ideas and thoughts. And once we get us all together, I kind of call it the Reese cup. It's peanut butter and chocolate. It's great together, right? So if we can make those Reese cups, we're doing really, really good. So bringing those different components together gives us a better solution and understanding. So it's a lot of patience, it's a lot of teaching, it's a lot of creating curriculum to force conversations between the teams for them to work together. As we transition this conversation over to executive management and the board is very similar. It's a lot of education. The board, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. If you think about what we learn in business school, my background is I got a business degree and all of that. So everything that we learn in business school around economics and business risk and all of that, financial risk is, if you go to your board, they all understand that. They understand how organizations work. This area is foreign. It's virtual. They didn't learn how to do this risk within business school, right? And so how do you demystify this risk and make it look no different than another operational risk? And what I mean by make it look no different is there's methodologies in which we use to understand our financial risk or our M&A risk or our operations risk. What's the methodology here that they can see that we've got the same rigors around it, and they can trust that the way that we're understanding that risk is taking into account the other risk, and that they can, and we're giving them the information to make better risk decisions. So here, how we communicate it to the board is trying to turn it into that risk discussion, not a technology discussion. If you go in and say, hey, I've got 8,000 vulnerabilities in my Oracle database, they're going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why aren't you fixing them, right? But if you can go in and say that the integrity of the process that produces this widget for us has this level of probability of failure, which could cause this financial or this operational issue, that makes sense to them. So our job, I think, is translating how that digital risk impacts that operational risk, and not have tech talk. If we have tech talk in there, you lose them and they get frustrated and they don't know what's going on. So we have to convert it to business talk.
So Jamey, you talked a lot about risk, and it seems like cyber risk is on the rise everywhere. What, aside from obviously the introduction of more technology, more data, as we discussed, the digital, is increasing the risk profile of production sites today? And why now?
Are you asking just?
It's a question for all of you, but
I would just add, I think, COVID's done two things for us, right? I think one is let us know that, we can depend more on technology, right? It enables us to continue to work, right? We work from home and everything. And on the flip side is how dependent we are on that technology, right? As we've seen a lot of attacks happen with remote working and things like that, and that how disruptive it can be to the business. And so for me, kind of echoing a little bit about Jamey is that stickiness, educating, like we're doing right now, we're doing weekly updates to our executive leadership on what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and those activities and how it may affect our business, right? Let's say because of the sanctions on Russia and, fertilizer, we use fertilizer, right? Our farmers do to grow. The other place we get fertilizer is China. They're reluctant on giving fertilizer. So we can assume cost of goods are going to be tenfold this fall, right? After this. So those are the conversations we're having, right? Relating. So to your question on how do we tackle it, we just have to be aware, right? Because we're going to continue, Mark talked to it, it's only going to increase the technology we use, right? We're going to use it and complement the existing technology we have, and we're going to do more things. I think it's just those partnerships that Jamey talked about, getting with the business, being transparent, being available, because our worst thing is shadow. We talked about shadow IT and everything. So the shadow implementation of technology we don't know about, which we're still battling, but I think it's getting better, right? At least my experience is more and more people, as long as we market security and market IT, as we're here to help or here to assist. We're not a service, we're your partner, right? We're part of the business too, because that's the other thing is people look at us as a service, they're just going to get, it's always customer support. They're going to beat the hell out of us on the phone all the time, right? But we're here to help. And if we get some quick wins where we could show some opportunities, like I can give you an example, right? We're in Stellantis, right? We talked about monitoring. We have a vehicle security operations center. We're monitoring over 1 million vehicles. So when I look at that price tag and how much we're doing, monitoring over 1 million vehicles and the amount of attacks that we have, we said, okay, it's not cost justifiable, right? I'm spending X million of dollars and the value I'm getting is not there. If I go to the board, I can't. So I said, how can we turn this into business enablement? What other things can we do with this information? Mark talked about it, that data. So we said, okay, what about fraud? Can we help identify fraud that's going on? People doing performance tweaks on their vehicle, trying to get more horsepower and then blowing the engine or transmission and taking it to the dealership, for a replacement. Or about lease vehicles, rollback miles, people leasing the vehicle and then roll back in the miles. So we started doing that and we started going back to warranty and helping reduce the amount of claims and identifying fraud. So now we're generating revenue, right? So showing the value, now they trust us and we get credibility, we can do more things. I think we got to get some wins in there a little bit.
That's fantastic. What a great example. So Mark, when you think about, the growing risk to OT, what do you most worry about? I mean, we talked about quality concerns. We talked about uptime. These are sort of the obvious. Is that really the issue? What worries you?
Well, a lot of things worry me in this job. I think, and you'd asked the question a little bit earlier about what's kind of changed. So we talked about the increasing reliance on technology in every part of our business. And then you think about how basically countries have figured out how they weaponize the ability to exploit it. And even individuals have done that. And so anybody can do it. It can take a couple people to figure out how they exploit it, and monetize it through things like Bitcoin and ransomware, or countries can weaponize it. We've seen some of that with the unfortunate events in Russia and the Ukraine, and we do business in a lot of very nuanced geographies like China and Russia. I have plants, people, things like that. You think about insider threats, you think about cybersecurity threats. And so, I worry about those types of things and how are we appropriately providing the access to information and services and things that we need to, but also, looking out for the greater good of the entirety of the company. And so that becomes important in how you architect and what people can do. And, Jamey alluded to zero trust, but basically, least privileged, lowest amount of access, zero trust type models and things like that. I think, because the plants have lots of old stuff and you think about ransomware, and there have been many Wall Street Journal articles that have shown, a Maersk or how many hospitals have been shut down because of ransomware, where the adversaries continue to get more sophisticated around that with these 0-day type events that our tools and our, kind of monitoring things aren't really geared towards looking for. And you have this big canvas to come after. And so I have 100,000 users of my systems, and I have, hundreds of millions of emails coming in. And you think about the parameters and you go, takes just one. And that's the interesting thing about this game. If you just need one, you need one person to click the wrong link and be in the wrong posture. You need one plant to have an internet browser where somebody went off and did something and be in the wrong posture. And, and so it's a game of, it takes a very low number to have a very big impact. And so how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, it seems like we always have to be right where an adversary needs to be right only once. And so it seems like a tough battle to win. Jamey is a CISO at a company that manages critical infrastructure. How do you stay ahead of this? I mean, what are your thoughts? How do you sleep at night?
Yeah, so it's interesting. And recently the board asked me, I just had my board update, and they're like, "What keeps you up?" Right? And I think it surprised them on my answer, because I think they were expecting me to say, the evolving threat actor leveraging technology against us, or the supply chain vulnerabilities, or the interdependencies that we have. The real thing that keeps me up at night is resources and talent. We're always going to have problems that need to be solved. The risk landscape is always going to be changing on us. And I'm really concerned about resources and talent. I mean, you're looking at, I think I saw something yesterday or the day before that said there's something like 600, 800,000 open security roles right now that's out there, and they're projecting it to be upwards of 2.5 million by 2025. The talent pool to solve these problems is what keeps me up at night. I can solve, with the talent I got today, we're solving the problems, or we wouldn't be where we're at. I'm just concerned about the sustainability and the backlog of resources and talent that we're seeing. And are we able to solve this problem 5 years from now when we go from 800,000 job vacancies to 2.5 million job vacancies, right? And so we've got to think of a way to, as an industry, as a profession, as an industry, how to create that multiplier effect for critical thinking like this, so that it's just not the security operations or the security or the CISO or the CIO or whoever's role it is to solve the problem. This is something that it takes all of us to solve. And so we've got to figure out that multiplier effect of driving that accountability across the board. So that's what keeps me up at night is what is the sustainability and the talent going forward.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge. I mean, you have to develop it too. I mean, if you think about it, Jamey talked about these open roles, a lot of them for senior people. Everybody's out fighting for senior people, and there just aren't going to be enough of those. And so how are you developing the talent and have a constant pipeline of this talent in a feeder system?
Yeah. Because we're kind of the chicken and the egg. I mean, I'm based off of where we're at and the speed of everything that we're seeing and the pressure's down. I'm looking for ready now people. And the reality is I can't get ready now people, and I've got to build it, which is 18 to 24 months out. So you kind of got this chicken and the egg of
it's a squeeze play.
Keep
right?
up
We're
with
getting
the pace.
squeezed.
yeah, how do you keep up with the pace but develop at the same time when we're all looking for ready now? So
So the shortage in talent in cyber has been an ongoing thing for many years. I mean, whether that number changes, and I know it changes from year to year, the trend is very consistent. We don't have enough people in the field to support the needs of all the businesses out there. So you mentioned, growing talent. What are some of the other things you guys or in your organizations respectively are doing to help in that? And the second part to this question is, what can an institution like Walsh do differently to prepare the next generation of cyber professionals for the real world out there?
I mean, I'll just add something that we were doing. I think it's a little creative. Is that I'm trying to bring it over to Campbells. Something we were starting at Stellantis and we started at Diebold is so you're right. The issue is there's not enough people to fill the seats, right? But there are enough people in the world, and the reality is not everybody has an opportunity to go to school, right? So we started looking. If you look at Google and Apple, they've removed the requirement for a degree. So we said, okay, our corporate policy is you must have a degree, right? So we started playing around with it and saying, okay, let's try to target like underprivileged kids in areas that don't have an opportunity to go to school. If we can create an aptitude test or something, to differentiate, these individuals, bring them on board on the job training for 1 year, right? To get them acclimated, bring them in like an intern salary, they're seniors graduating, and then put them in a program where we'll pay for their school. They got like 5 years to get a 4 year, to get their bachelor's degree. We locked that individual in for about 6 years now, right? When I say this, and it's not meant to be, but at a decent wage, right? Because we're giving somebody an opportunity, so they don't have the skills and everything. So what we're doing is in turn generating that pipeline, right? Or trying to contribute to that pipeline. And that's something we were starting to do at Stellantis. We're partnering with some of the local schools. I'm bringing the same program to Campbells because it's the same problem, right? But as leaders, we need to contribute, right? We can't just say, hey, HR, you need to recruit this person for us and put it all on them. So we also go to the job fairs, right? We help promote the organization. We talk, right? What we do today. We talked about, first thing we did, Mark and Jamey talked about the organization, right? And how big and everything, right? Because it's a place you want to attract people to. It's a great company, right? Same thing with Campbell's, great culture. We want good people. So that's just one idea that we had, right? But I think as leaders, we need to contribute to that, right? And be creative. We need to cause disruption in that space too.
Absolutely. So Mark, what is 3M doing to help with this?
Yeah, I
How
mean,
are you dealing with the challenges?
it's a variety of things. I mean, obviously we have oars in the water globally. So how do you leverage global talent pools in other countries and locations where you can find some of this talent? I think, as Martin said, certainly thinking about people differently coming out of high school, different skills and things like that, trade school programs and things where people are getting certifications without a college degree around this. And can you funnel that in? We use certain parts of our other organization. We've vertically integrated parts of our, like our service desk and some of those areas around the globe, because some of those people tend to be some of our shining stars as we move them over from that into maybe kind of an entry level vulnerability management or cyber operations center type skill set. And so, how do you harness the power of some of that coming across from other areas where maybe it's a little bit easier to get talent and use that to kind of discern who could move over and do something a little bit more, with a little bit more of the critical thinking. So it's a variety of things. It's not going to be just any one thing, but I think, it's also how do you sponsor hackathons and things like that with universities and different programs, go deeper with universities and curriculum development and kind of engagement where you're differentiating yourself and your company vis-a-vis all the other opportunities that these young individuals have coming out of school. So it's a variety of things, but you constantly have to do that. And also it's important with partnerships, to be honest. You're never going to fill all this internally. There's a lot of niche expertise and things like that happens. And so partnerships, whether that's with Vicki, your group, E&Y, or tech companies or different groups, as you're looking to bring that in and then, really trying to integrate that technology the right way where you're developing your people as you bring those experts in and they're learning side by side with it.
So in this, yeah, in this area, some of the things that we're doing, we're right now developing a security academy across the enterprise. The idea is how do we, again, like I said, create that multiplier effect, right? If I've got a application developer that's a mid-level application developer that wants to move to a senior level, there's got to be some level of security competency there. So we're working with the business units on understanding what those level of competencies that we need to have across the organization. And we're building the security academy around that to help them in their internal job promotions, right? It surprises me today, you still go out to application development teams and you talk to the senior application developer and they don't have not went through any type of security anything, right? And so you're like, how did you become a senior developer, right? But you see that time and time again, right? Even for system administrators, network administrators. I'm not a big believer in like security engineering and architecture, to be honest with you. I think a network engineer and a network architect should be able to design a secure solution. So I'm like, how do you take that security component? Because what happens right now, network engineering or network architecture will go design something and then they throw it over the fence to security and say secure it. It's like, well, no, why can't you design a secure solution, right, based off a set of requirements? So we're pushing out a little bit different concept around that of saying no is the CTO organization, the CIO organization. You've got to have competent people that develop and operate secure solutions and build it into that versus security having to go around and do it because you can't get enough security folks.
I mean, Jamie's point's spot on. I mean, security by design is critical. If you think everything's technology and then you're going to run all that through a central small little cyber group to ensure it, I mean, it's going to be very tough to keep pace with that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's
So
really
we're hitting security. Yeah, so we're hitting Security Academy. We're rethinking our degree components, right? And what that looks like. I came up through a different path. I joined the military. I spent 7 years in the Navy. I got out. I didn't finish my degree until I was 40 years old, right? And it's a business degree. It's not a technology degree, right? So, and by the time I got it, I was already a CISO at one of the largest power utilities in the country, right? So I can kind of, show you can move up and do that. So I have a different kind of view on, especially in this area, kind of around the degree and how we can advance folks through that. So we're looking at how we do that through, through hands-on education, learn something, do something. The other one is, I think, for colleges and colleges like Walsh, is to think about, there's a big difference between security risk management and the technology side of security, of the hands-on keyboard component. The security risk management side is more is something I think should be in almost all, especially business curriculums and all of that, right? Is how to take that. We don't have to teach people how to code or how to compromise systems or things like that. We do need to teach them how to ask the right questions, what to be thinking about from a business risk standpoint that will help drive that. So I think adding security risk management concepts and things like that into all the different curriculums, even the engineering curriculums like electrical engineering curriculums and things like that, to give them that exposure to think differently, so that as they get out into the workforce, they have exposure to kind of what does that risk management look like. They don't have to have the technical learning or the technical classes, but that critical thinking component. And I think that's some things Walsh could do.
Awesome. Do we have any questions from the line? Susie, do you want to share those?
Sure. So we'll take a look at some of the questions that we have on the chat that have come in. Thank you so much. So we have one here. Mark Murphy mentioned business continuity plans. So how are you testing your plans when everything is moving so fast? And how do you prepare for incidents and recovery?
Yeah, I saw that question. I was hoping I didn't have to answer it. It's a tough one. Well, everything's more connected, right? And it is moving really quickly. And you can't do a live drill in a manufacturing environment that's 7x24. And so it does become more tabletops, ransomware tabletop exercises. How would you respond? There's a little bit more around kind of like your technology strategy, backup and recovery and things like that, air gapping and stuff like that. We have incident management processes around cyber events and things that we go through, and we'll go through exercises of those up to including the board and some of those exercises around decisions, communications, do we pay a ransom or not, things like that. I think the other thing that, and what's interesting is it hasn't been a remnant of cyber, but just even with COVID, how you think about business continuity, your supply chain continuity and things like that. And so COVID took plants in China offline, things like that. And so you have to really go look at supply chain resiliency and, and cyber is one of many different reasons that you may have challenges, the ports and the, kind of the backup in the ports, the semiconductor reliance, we're seeing that in the technology space of trying to get equipment, the supply chain shortages and things like that, or a plant outage in an area that's hit with like a COVID hotspot, and how do you mitigate that? And so it's actually, cyber is a dimension of that, but it's a bigger conversation. And, so we've been talking a lot about that more from a supply chain resiliency point of view, with cyber just being one of the ways that we could have an impact.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Mark. And we have a couple in the chat, but it sounds like people are answering on. One of the questions was, any tips for someone with a strong business background but less experience in tech to move over into cyber? And it is interesting because we actually have a cyber MBA program for folks who are interested in doing cyber leadership, technology and cybersecurity leadership, as well as a cybersecurity certificate that is really aimed at mid-level and C-suite leaders who are looking to increase their knowledge of cybersecurity, reduce their cyber risk score, and build strong, sustainable organizations. We are coming up on our, Mark, Jamey, go ahead. Go ahead, Jamey.
My answer to that would be just do it. I love bringing in people from the business and hiring them in because they understand the business processes, right? And we're trying to secure the business processes because that's what you're looking for. You're wanting integrity of the business process that runs the business. And so I would say anybody that's looking, it might feel intimidating because you might not say, hey, I don't understand this stuff. I think you'd be surprised at how much value you would really bring to a security department of just coming over and doing it. And the value is unbelievable. So I would say lean into it, do it, take the step, because you will get value out of it on both sides.
I would agree with Jamey. I mean, some of my best leaders have come over from areas like an internal audit, where they didn't have a technology background, maybe an accounting background or something like that, but they got to learn our business processes, business risk, and all of that. And so they have a kind of a balanced and informed point of view of what we do and how we think about it, versus just lead with technology, which, is a part of it, but it's not where you should start this.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark, Jamey, Martin. I want to thank all of our speakers, Martin Bally, Mark Murphy, Jamey Sample, as well as our moderator, Vicki Kamenova. We are coming up on our time, and I want to thank all of you for joining us for this amazing discussion and challenges and opportunities in Industry 4.0 with cybersecurity. If you'd like to stay up to date with our virtual and live events, please follow Walsh College on LinkedIn or visit us at foundation.walshcollege.edu, and you can sign up for updates. And if you or your business are interested in learning more about what Walsh can do for you, please feel free to reach out to us by emailing us at advancement@walshcollege.edu. Thank you so much for all of our attendees that joined, for those that are listening and actively engaged. We appreciate this, and we look forward to seeing you at future discussions. Have a wonderful rest of your day.